I never thought a morning run would change my life, but that's exactly what happened on that crisp autumn day. My name is Clara, and looking back now, I should have trusted my gut when I first met Evelyn Harper. I was on my usual route through Preston Park when I quite literally ran into her. She was standing in the middle of the path, photographing the fall foliage, and I was too focused on my running playlist to notice her until the last second. My attempt to dodge left us both stumbling, her camera dangling precariously from her neck. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry." I steadied her by the elbow, mortified. Instead of being angry, she laughed, a warm, melodious sound that seemed to brighten the morning air. "No harm done, dear. Though I must say, you've given me quite the morning excitement." Her steel-gray hair was perfectly styled, and her cashmere sweater probably cost more than my monthly rent. "I should have been paying better attention," I said, pulling out my earbuds. She studied me with keen interest, her head tilting slightly. "You look familiar. Do you teach at Riverside High?" "Yes, actually. Science department." "Ah." Her eyes lit up. "My son mentioned you. Ryan Harper? He did some IT work for the school last month." I remembered him, quiet, kind eyes, slightly awkward in an endearing way. He'd spent 3 days updating our lab computers, and we'd had a few pleasant conversations during lunch breaks. "Of course," I said. "He did great work." "You know," she said, her voice taking on a casual tone that somehow felt anything but, "we're having a small dinner party this Friday. Nothing fancy, just family and a few close friends. You should join us." Something in her expression made me hesitate. It was too eager, too calculated for a chance encounter. But before I could formulate a polite decline, she added, "Ryan will be there. He's single, you know, and he mentioned how interesting he found your conversations." I felt my cheeks warm, though whether from embarrassment or interest, I wasn't sure. I wouldn't want to impose. "Nonsense. Here's my card. We're at 47 Maple Grove. 7 o'clock. She pressed a heavy cream-colored business card into my hand. "Don't disappoint me, Clara." As I watched her walk away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a random meeting at all. The way she'd said my name, like she'd been waiting to use it, sent a slight chill down my spine. I looked down at the card in my hand, tracing the embossed letters with my finger. Evelyn Harper, Harper Family Foundation. Below it, a handwritten note appeared. "Looking forward to Friday." I should have thrown that card away. Should have trusted the uneasy feeling in my gut. But curiosity got the better of me, and that decision would set in motion events that would tear apart not just one family, but two. The Harper mansion felt different in daylight. After 6 months of dating Ryan, I'd grown used to its grandeur. But something about watching Evelyn arrange flowers in the sunlit conservatory made my skin prickle. She hummed softly, precise fingers positioning each stem with calculated perfection. "Clara, darling," she called without turning around. "Come help me with these peonies." I wondered how she'd known I was there. I hadn't made a sound. "Ryan's running late at work again?" she asked, though it sounded more like a statement than a question. "Yes, he texted me to come straight here for dinner." I accepted the flowers she handed me, noting how the thorns had all been meticulously removed. "He works too hard," she sighed, adjusting my grip on the stems. "But that's what it takes to maintain the Harper legacy. You understand that, don't you?" Before I could respond, Julia burst into the conservatory, her artistic energy a stark contrast to her mother's controlled demeanor. "Clara, thank God you're here. Mom's been arranging those flowers for 2 hours." Evelyn's lips tightened almost imperceptibly. "Julia, dear, perhaps you could check on dinner?" "Actually," Julia linked her arm through mine, "I need to borrow Clara for a minute. Wedding stuff." I hadn't even started planning my wedding yet. Ryan had proposed just last week, and we'd only told the family yesterday. But something in Julia's eyes made me play along. She pulled me into her studio, closing the door quietly. "Sorry, I just needed to rescue you. Mom gets intense about her flower arrangements." Julia's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Listen, about the wedding. Just be careful, okay?" "Careful about what?" A crash from downstairs interrupted us. We rushed to find Evelyn standing over a shattered vase, her face ashen. Water pooled around designer heels, but she didn't move. "Mother?" Julia stepped forward. "It's nothing," Evelyn snapped, then immediately softened. "Just clumsy. Clara, would you fetch some towels?" "They're in the kitchen, second drawer by the sink." In the kitchen, I found the drawer locked. As I tried the next one, I heard voices from the study across the hall. "Everything's proceeding as planned," Evelyn was saying to someone. "The girl is perfect, good breeding, excellent genetics. The foundation's future will be secure. And Ryan," a male voice asked. Does he suspect? Ryan will do what's expected of him. He always has. My hands shook as I closed the drawer. The way they talked about me, about Ryan, like we were pieces in some elaborate game. I thought about Julia's warning, about Ryan's recent distant behavior. What exactly had I gotten myself into? I heard footsteps approaching and quickly grabbed paper towels from the counter. Whatever game the Harpers were playing, I was starting to realize I might be nothing more than a pawn. The hospital room felt too bright, too sterile, as I cradled my newborn son. After 18 hours of labor, exhaustion pulled at my edges, but something kept me from sleeping. Maybe it was the way Evelyn had hovered during the delivery, directing the medical staff like a theater production. Ryan had stepped out to get coffee, and I was finally alone with my baby. Almost-alone. He has the Harper chin, Evelyn said from the doorway, making me jump. She moved to the window, adjusting the blinds with precise movements. The foundation's board will be pleased. What does the foundation have to do with my son? My arms tightened around him instinctively. She smiled that perfect smile. Everything is about legacy, Clara. You'll understand soon enough. A nurse entered, not my regular one, wearing scrubs that seemed too pristine. Time for the little one's checkup, she announced, reaching for my baby with practiced efficiency. I wasn't told about any checkup, I said, drawing back. Standard procedure, the nurse replied, but her eyes flickered to Evelyn. Mother? Ryan's voice came from the hallway. What are you doing here so early? The nurse withdrew her hands quickly, nodding to Evelyn before hurrying out. Something about their exchange made my stomach turn. Just checking on my grandson, Evelyn said smoothly. Clara seems tired. Perhaps we should let the nurses take him to the nursery. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. He stays with me. Ryan moved to my side, but his hand on my shoulder felt uncertain. Mom, maybe you should go home. Get some rest. Of course, darling. She kissed his cheek, then mine, her perfume overwhelming. I've already arranged the nursery at the house. You'll move in next week, as discussed. We haven't discussed anything. I started, but Ryan squeezed my shoulder. Mom, we'll talk about this later. After she left, I turned to Ryan. What's going on? Why was that nurse? You're exhausted, he interrupted, not meeting my eyes. Try to sleep. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of wrongness. I kept my son in my arms, watching the door. Around midnight, I heard whispers in the hallway. Wrong timing. Mrs. Harper won't be pleased. Try again tomorrow. I reached for my phone with trembling hands and called Julia. Something's wrong, I whispered. I think they're trying to take him. There was a long pause. Don't let anyone take him, Clara. Not even the nurses. I'm on my way. I looked down at my sleeping son, then at Ryan passed out in the chair beside me. The Harper chin, Evelyn had said. But in the dim light, all I could see was my own mother's nose, my father's ears. What exactly had the Harpers planned for my baby? 6 months after bringing James home, I sat in my mother's kitchen, watching her rock my son while I clutched a cup of coffee gone cold. The morning light caught the silver in her hair, reminding me how much I needed her strength right now. Ryan didn't come home last night, I said. Again. Mom's rocking paused briefly. Have you talked to him about the hospital incident? He changes the subject. Says I'm being paranoid. I traced the rim of my cup. Yesterday, I found adoption paperwork in Evelyn's study while she was showing me her redecorating plans. Adoption paperwork? Blank forms. Recent ones. My voice cracked. And a file with my complete medical history. Things I've never told anyone. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Through the window, I spotted Julia's car. She burst in without waiting for an answer, her designer bag clutched tight. Clara, thank God. You need to see this. She pulled out a folder, hands shaking. I found it in Mom's private safe when I was looking for the foundation's logo files. The documents inside made my blood run cold. Detailed genetic profiles. Fertility clinic receipts. A contract with something called Legacy Solutions. There's more, Julia said, glancing at James. That nurse at the hospital? She doesn't exist. At least, not as hospital staff. Mom stood, cradling James closer. What are you saying? I think, Julia swallowed hard. I think Mom's been planning this for years. Clara wasn't the first candidate. A text lit up my phone. Ryan, where are you? Mom's worried. Come home. I can't go back there, I whispered. You won't, Mom said firmly. Not until we figure this out. Julia pulled out one last paper. You need help. Professional help. I know someone, Tom Reynolds. He investigates family law cases. He's helped other people who've dealt with similar situations. Similar situations? I echoed. Other families. Other mothers who? Julia trailed off, looking at James. My phone buzzed again. Evelyn this time. Darling, the nursery painter is here. We need to make decisions about James's future. The way she wrote James's future made my skin crawl. I thought about the adoption papers, the mysterious nurse, Ryan's increasing absences. Call him, I told Julia. Call Tom now. As Julia stepped out to make the call, Mom touched my arm. Clara, whatever's happening, remember, you're stronger than you think. I watched James sleep, his tiny fingers curled into fists. I'd spent months trying to convince myself I was imagining things, that Evelyn's interest in my son was normal grandmother behavior. But normal grandmothers don't forge medical records or hire fake nurses. The question was, how far would Evelyn go to get what she wanted? And more importantly, what exactly did she want with my son? Tom Reynolds spread the documents across my mother's dining room table, each paper another piece of an impossible puzzle. 3 weeks of investigation had revealed more than I was prepared to handle. The Harper Foundation isn't just wealthy, Tom explained, pointing to financial records. It's part of a larger network. They call themselves Legacy Solutions. They match wealthy families with specific genetic profiles. Match them for what? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Breeding, Julia whispered from beside me. Like thoroughbred horses. Tom nodded grimly. Your marriage wasn't an accident, Clara. Evelyn had your genetic profile before she ever bumped into you that morning. You were selected. My hands shook as I picked up a photograph. 5 women, all with similar features to mine, all with children around James's age. Who are they? Previous candidates. Some backed out, others. Tom hesitated. They had accidents, mental breakdowns. Lost custody. A text lit up my phone. Ryan. Mom's lawyers are coming tomorrow. Where are you and James? Clara. Tom leaned forward. There's something else. The Foundation's charter requires a male heir with specific genetic markers to inherit. James's DNA test results were concerning to them. What do you mean? According to these reports, he shuffled through papers, James doesn't match their required profile. And there's a clause about corrective measures if the first attempt fails. The room spun. I thought about the adoption papers, the fake nurse, Ryan's increasing absences. They're going to try to take him. Julia grabbed my hand. We won't let them. My phone buzzed again. Evelyn. Darling, stop this foolishness. Come home. We can discuss James's future like family. I found this too, Tom said quietly, sliding over one last document. Signed by Ryan 3 months before he met you. It was a contract. Ryan's signature at the bottom, agreeing to participate in the Legacy Solutions program. He'd known everything. The doorbell rang, making us all jump. Through the window, I saw Ryan's car in the driveway. Back door, Mom said sharply, already moving toward James's portable crib. Now! As Julia helped Mom with James, I grabbed the documents, hands trembling so badly I could barely hold them. Ryan's voice carried through the door, calling my name. Clara. Tom caught my arm. There's something else you should know. About why I took this case. Later, I hissed, hearing Ryan's key in the lock. No, you need to know. The door opened. Ryan stood there, but he wasn't alone. Behind him, Evelyn smiled her perfect smile. Clara, darling, she said, stepping forward. It's time to come home. We have so much to discuss about James's future. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about custody or inheritance. This was about survival. The Harper Mansion's dining room felt like a courtroom, with the entire family gathered around the massive table. Frank sat at one end, looking confused but concerned. Julia perched nervously beside him, while Ryan stood by the window, refusing to meet my eyes. Mom and Tom flanked me protectively, James sleeping in my arms. Evelyn sat opposite me, perfectly composed. Clara, dear, you're being hysterical. Everything we've done has been for James's future. I laid the Legacy Solutions documents on the table. Like selecting me for my genetic profile? Or hiring a fake nurse to switch my baby? Frank's head snapped up. What is she talking about, Evelyn? Ask your son, I said, sliding Ryan's contract across the polished mahogany. He knew from the beginning. This whole marriage was arranged. Ryan. Frank's voice cracked. It wasn't like that, Ryan finally spoke, still staring out the window. I loved you, Clara. I still do. Enough, Evelyn cut in. Frank, everything I've done has been to protect our legacy. The Foundation requires specific genetic markers. James doesn't qualify. So you're going to what? I challenged. Make me disappear like the others? Have another accident? The room went silent. Even Evelyn looked startled. Others? Frank whispered. Tom stepped forward, pulling out more photos. 5 women before Clara. All selected, all removed when they didn't produce the right air. Mother! Julia's voice shook. What did you do to them? Evelyn's mask cracked slightly. Julia, darling, you don't understand. Our family's future is more important than human lives? I stood, backing toward the door. Then your own grandson? Clara, Ryan moved toward me, please. We can work this out. Work what out? How to replace me? Or just James? Evelyn's smile returned, colder now. You signed a prenuptial agreement, Clara. And given your recent, unstable behavior documented by several medical professionals, I doubt any judge would grant you custody. My blood ran cold. What medical professionals? The ones who've been monitoring your concerning paranoid episodes, she said smoothly. Such a shame, really. Postpartum psychosis is so tragic. That's when I realized every doctor's appointment, every therapy session she'd helpfully arranged. She'd been building a case against me for months. You won't get away with this, I said, but my voice wavered. I already have, dear. Evelyn nodded toward the foyer, where 2 men in suits appeared. These gentlemen are here to help evaluate your fitness as a mother. Clara, Tom stepped between us, run. But Ryan was faster, grabbing my arm. James woke, crying. It's for the best, Ryan whispered, reaching for our son. Mom knows what's best for everyone. In that moment, watching my husband try to take our baby, seeing Evelyn's triumphant smile, I realized I'd lost everything. Everything except the will to fight back. The police lights cast red and blue shadows across the Harper Mansion's facade. I stood in the foyer, James secure in my mother's arms, as Detective Sanders reviewed the evidence Tom and I had gathered. Mrs. Harper, Sanders addressed Evelyn, who sat rigidly in her armchair. We have testimony from 3 of the previous women. They're willing to press charges. This is absurd. Evelyn's voice remained steady, but her fingers gripped the armrest. Everything was perfectly legal. Legal? Julia stepped forward, clutching a file. Like this? My medical records? The fertility treatments you forced on me without my knowledge. The room went still. Frank turned to his wife, face ashen. What is she talking about? Show them, Julia, I said quietly. Julia's hands shook as she opened the file. Mom wasn't just planning for Ryan's heir. She was preparing me too. Monthly vitamin injections, specialized diet plans, all designed to produce the perfect Harper grandchild. It was for your own good, Evelyn snapped. Both of you needed guidance. Direction. Direction. Ryan's voice cracked. He stood by the window, where he'd been silent for the past hour. Like how you directed me to marry Clara. To watch her every move. To report back to you. I felt the familiar pain in my chest, but pushed through it. Tell them the rest, Ryan. About the hospital. About what was supposed to happen to James. I couldn't do it, he whispered. I couldn't let them take him. That's why I called Tom. Evelyn's composure finally cracked. You brought in the investigator. Actually, Tom stepped forward. Ryan just confirmed what I already knew. You see, Evelyn, you made one crucial mistake. And what was that? She sneered. You forgot about your sister's son. The one you had erased from the family records 20 years ago. The one who grew up to become a private investigator. The color drained from Evelyn's face. Thomas. Hello, Aunt Evelyn. Tom's voice was ice. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize Clara from the genetic profile you used to reject my mother? Frank stood suddenly. Our nephew? The one you said died in childhood. Everything I did was to protect this family. Evelyn's calm facade shattered completely. To ensure our legacy. These common bloodlines would have destroyed everything we built. No, Mother. Julia moved to stand beside me. You destroyed it yourself. Detective Sanders stepped forward, handcuffs glinting. Evelyn Harper, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted kidnapping. As they led Evelyn away, she turned to me one last time. You'll never understand what it takes to protect a legacy. You're right, I said, taking James from my mother. Because I'm too busy protecting my son. The front door closed behind her, and with it, the weight of the past year finally began to lift. But as I looked at Ryan, still by the window, I knew some wounds wouldn't heal so easily. Legacy, it turns out, isn't about bloodlines or genetic profiles. It's about the truth we choose to pass on. 6 months after Evelyn's arrest, I stood in the Harper Mansion one last time, helping Julia pack up the last of her belongings. The house was being sold. Its proceeds split between compensating Evelyn's victims and funding a foundation for families affected by genetic discrimination. Found something you should see, Julia called from Evelyn's study. She held out a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with Evelyn's precise handwriting. The entries dated back 30 years, documenting every calculated decision, every manipulated relationship. But it was the final entry, written the night before her arrest, that made my hands shake. "I thought I was protecting them," Evelyn had written. "Now I realize I was only protecting my fear." Tom appeared in the doorway, James sleeping against his shoulder. These days, my son's uncle was a constant presence in our lives, helping us rebuild what Evelyn had tried to destroy. "Ryan's here," he said quietly. "I found my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, in the garden where we'd once gotten married." He looked smaller somehow, more human without his mother's shadow looming over him. "The divorce papers are signed," he said, holding out a manila envelope. "And I've signed over full custody. It's the least I can do." "What will you do now?" "Therapy for starters." He managed a weak smile. "Dad's helping me understand everything. Maybe someday James will want to know his father. When he's older." "Maybe," I said, though we both knew it wasn't that simple. Frank appeared on the terrace, looking aged but somehow lighter. "Clara, before you go, there's something you should know about the Foundation's new direction." He explained how they'd discovered more families, more children affected by legacy solutions practices. The Harper fortune would now protect those it had once sought to control. "It's what Tom suggested," Frank said, "using the Harper legacy to heal instead of harm." Later, as Julia and I watched the moving trucks pull away, she squeezed my hand. "You know what's weird? Mom actually got what she wanted. The Harper name will live on. Just not how she planned." I thought about Evelyn sitting in prison, finally facing the consequences of her actions. She'd written to me once, a single line, "Perhaps this is the legacy I deserve." James stirred in his stroller, reaching for a fallen leaf. He had my eyes, Ryan's chin, and absolutely none of the genetic markers Evelyn had schemed for. He was perfectly, wonderfully himself. "Ready to go home?" Tom asked, joining us with the last box. I looked at my son, at Julia, at the mansion that had housed so many secrets. "Yes," I said. "I think we all are. Some legacies are built on blood and manipulation. Others grow from truth and healing. In the end, we each choose which one to carry forward."